Hi, I'm Ben Wilmore, and this time around we're going to take a quick look at why does the concept of the background layer confuse people. Whenever you open an image that's been saved in a common file format like JPEG or GIF or PNG, you'll find that every time you open an image like that, all you get in your layers panel is something called the background. Then, if you happen to add a layer to one of those files, and you go to save the image, like you just type Command-S or Control-S in Windows to say save, it won't let you save that directly back into the file format it started with. And that's because the file format you started in simply doesn't support layers. And when you have added a layer, Photoshop's trying to make sure you don't unintentionally combine your layers together. So if you created a layer, there's got to be a reason for it, and therefore it's going to bring up a dialog to ask you which file format would you like to use, and it's only going to give you about 4 choices. Those choices will likely be Photoshop, TIFF, large document format, and Photoshop PDF. And that's because all of those file formats, they support layers. The other file formats we have available, they don't know what the heck a layer is, and therefore they just don't show up. But when you're in the Save dialog box, there's usually a button that says Save a Copy. And if you click on that, it brings you to another screen that looks just like where you were, except for all the file formats are listed. And when you choose a file format that doesn't support layers, there's a checkbox called Layers, and it just gets turned off. And that means your layers will be discarded. Well, it's not actually discarded. They'll be merged together, what's known as flattening your image. And you could have done that manually. If you went to the Layer menu and you choose Flatten Image, then all those file formats would have been available. So why is it that we have this background, and what's up with that? Well, it has the same limitations as file formats that do not support layers. So what are those limitations? Well, first, you can't have any what's known as big data. Big data is where your image can extend beyond the bounds of your document. And if you work with layers, you can easily move a layer so part of it goes beyond the edge of your screen. Well, file formats don't know how to save that, at least ones that don't support layers. So if you ever flatten your image, one of the first things it does is it crops your image so anything that's going beyond the document bounds gets discarded. Then the other thing Flatten Image does is it throws away any layers that have the eyeballs turned off. So any hidden layers get discarded. Any layers that are left over get merged together into one piece. But that's not all. The background layer can't have anything that is see-through, where there's a hole in that layer. Instead, it's all solid. So therefore, any areas where you could see a checkerboard showing up that indicated an area was empty, that's going to get filled in, usually with your background color, because those file formats just don't know how to save anything that would be empty. So let's go into Photoshop and see how we work with the background layer. So here I have an image that was a JPEG file, and I just opened it. I'm going to go in the Layers panel, click the new layer icon, and it's just an empty layer. There's nothing in the layer. And then I'm going to type Command-S to attempt to save this image. And instead of just saving the image like it would have done had I just painted directly on the background layer, because I created a brand new layer, this popped up. And right here under Format, those are the 4 file formats in Photoshop that can save layers. So those are the only ones offered. But right there is the Save a Copy button, and if I click on it, right there you see the Layers checkbox. And if I go over here and I choose a file format that doesn't understand what layers are and just can't save them, then that little checkbox gets turned off. And that means it's going to flatten the image. And that's the reason why it forces you into this screen called Save a Copy. Now, it used to be that you could save into those other file formats without having to go to Save a Copy. Well, Adobe added a preference. If I come in here to my preferences and choose File Handling, then in here you're going to find that right here is a choice called Enable Legacy Save As. And if I turn that on, and it's going to tell me a little bit about it, but this means, and it's just telling me that I might overwrite a file. I'm going to say Don't Show Again and click OK. But now enabling legacy save as makes it so I no longer have to choose save a copy in order to be able to save into a file format that doesn't support layers. So I'm going to turn that on. And now if you look at my layers panel, you'll notice the background layer has a lock symbol on it. It always has that turned on when you open an image that has a background layer. And you can either double click on the name to change it, or just click that lock symbol and you're going to change it from a background layer into a normal layer. Once you've done that, then you can use the move tool and push it beyond the edge of the document. You can make a selection and hit delete to make a transparent area. You no longer have the limitations you used to have back when it was a background layer. So then, if I want to turn this back into a background, I cannot just double click on the name and change it to background, because if I do, you're going to find, first, I misspelled it, but secondly, that there won't be any lock symbol next to it, and it won't have the normal limitations of a background layer. If you want to get a background layer back into your image, you have a few choices. The first thing you could do is go up to the layer menu, and in there you have the choice of flatten image. And that will produce a background. But let me choose undo, and let's just say I wanted to keep this layer for some reason, even though it's just empty right now. I could click on another layer and then go up to the layer menu, and there's a choice called New Background from Layer. And that means it's not going to affect the other layers in my document. It's only going to affect the one that's currently active. And if any part of this layer extends beyond the bounds of the document, those areas will be trimmed off. And any areas that are transparent, like that area over on the right, will be filled in. And then we get back to a background and you find the lock symbol is there once again. So the background layer is really a remnant of the old days. Back when I first started teaching Photoshop, I taught with Photoshop version 2.5. And in that version, layers did not exist. And so everything you did was done on the background. There wasn't even a layers panel to do anything with. So when they introduced layers, they needed to do something to try to differentiate between the stuff that could be saved in most file formats and the stuff that would need to be saved in a special file format such as Photoshop or TIFF, something that supported layers. And they decided to have this concept called the background. And so if you look in your layers panel and all you see is the background and nothing else, then you can save that image in any file format in general. And if you see anything in addition to the background or you don't see a background, then you're either going to have to use save a copy, and that little checkbox called layers will get turned off when you choose a file format that's not supported. Or you can always go up to the layer menu and choose flatten to kind of finalize or finish your image before saving it out. Then all your file formats will be available. But the background causes a lot of confusion, and I think in general it could probably be done away with these days, because they could simply make it, if you choose a file format that doesn't support layers, maybe it flashes your screen for an instant to say, hey, your image is going to be flattened, and it makes it so it doesn't save over the original file or something. It's a separate image. But I really just don't see a great purpose for the background layer anymore. I'm Ben Wilmore. I'll see you next time.